Let's spend a minute talking about what we might call domains of ethical evaluation. That is, there are different kinds of things that we evaluate from an ethical perspective. And the first one that we've been discussing to this point is the idea of evaluating a character, a person, or the person's character. And you might say the person is virtuous, you might say vicious, or exhibits vices, or neutral. So those are three kinds of, it kind of gives us the whole scale on which we evaluate people's character. And that's one way we evaluate people from an ethical perspective. On the other hand, ethics is also involved in evaluating people's actions. And it's oftentimes that's a very important one, especially if we're looking to apply ethics. We're trying to figure out what kinds of actions, what kinds of behaviors are right, wrong. And let's talk a little bit about more about the terms, how we would go evaluating actions. That is, basically, actions are either permissible or forbidden, not permissible. Now, in the realm of permissible actions, that is, you might say, let's give an example. You might say that what's not permissible is murder. What is permissible is giving charity. However, if we're looking in the areas of permissibility, we might say that there's a distinction to be made, those things that we have to do, we're obligated to do, and those things that are optional. Those are kind of two categories within all of the actions that are morally permissible. On the other hand, things that are not morally permissible or forbidden, we would usually say are wrong. And sometimes we use right to mean permissible, and sometimes we use morally right to mean obligatory. Now, when we're talking about optional actions, there are two other categories in which actions fall. That is, you might say they're neutral or supererogatory. And that is, the neutral ones are things like my eating breakfast, my having Cheerios for breakfast, my having eggs for breakfast. That's a neutral action. It's not something, it is permissible, but it's not obligatory. I don't have to have the eggs for breakfast. I don't have to have the Cheerios. So my having Cheerios, as I said, is kind of a neutral. Or some of my students sometimes think that when they hear about my dietary habits that I'm doing something morally wrong. So they think that my eating habits are not neutral. If you're worried about my diet, my walking down the stairs or my walking down the street is a neutral action. If I'm just going for a walk, because I feel like going for a walk, that's something that it's certainly permissible. It's not forbidden for me to take a walk down the street, but it's also not something that's morally required, morally obligatory. Now there's this other category of actions, supererogatory. And supererogatory actions are characteristic actions of what, or we would characterize them at least as heroic actions. Think of the soldier jumping on the grenade to save the lives of his or her four comrades. That we would say is a supererogatory, a really heroic action, something that goes above and beyond the call of duty. Now notice all of the actions we use in English, we use morally right on various occasions to mean permissible, obligatory, supererogatory, any of those terms. Wrong we use for wrong. But now these are two.